What Roosevelt had begun, and what people responded to in Roosevelt, was a new kind of government. One that allied itself not with big business, but with what Roosevelt called the little man, the one-third of a nation ill-housed, ill-clothed, ill-fed. His fireside chats, radio broadcasts to the nation, became a symbol of the New Deal itself. The American government was no longer remote, aloof. Now it was connected, involved, concerned with the welfare of each and every citizen.
I like to think of our country as one home in which the interests of each member are bound up with the happiness of all. We ought to know by now that the welfare of your family or of mine cannot be bought at the sacrifice of our neighbor's family, that our well-being depends in the long run upon the well-being of our neighbors. The good neighbor idea needs to be put into practice in our community relationships.
One testimony in the files of the Federal Writers Project describes a WPA worker from Asheville, North Carolina. Every day she'd walk 8 miles up into the mountains. Her job was to bring the vision of the New Deal to some of the most remote of all America's poor. Her name was Nanny Carson.
I reckon my supervisors told you about me. They like to tell how I walk every day to teach some illiterates. There's a whole community living on a ridge. They're very poor, and they've intermarried until they're all kin to each other. The main family is the Hackles, and the name of their settlement is Hackletown. The mountains cut Hackletown off from the good farming sections, and the highway and the roads going into it are so bad that the school buses can't get within 3 miles of it. So the people are real degraded, real ignorant and suspicious. I mean, they don't live that far from my home here in Asheville, but, you know, they're just plain wild.
The Hackles of Hackletown didn't owe their poverty to the Depression. Life here in the backwoods had not changed much for decades. And these were proud people, fiercely independent. They hadn't asked for help. For Nanny Carson to barge in here didn't just show courage, it showed how seriously this New Deal government took its obligations.
I'm a mountain woman myself. I've never been one to be stopped by hardships. But I'll confess, the first time I visited the Hackles, I was so nervous. The woman, Rena Hackle, was out in her yard. When she saw me coming, she ran inside, shut the door. When I knocked, she opened the door just a crack. I could see how her teeth were all blackened with snuff. The air was foul inside. I almost choked. Her children, they were just crying out for medical attention. Didn't get very far that first day, but I kept going back, kept on being friendly. I was able to show her how to clean the children's sores, treat the burns. By and by, I got her to wash and mend their clothes, clean up her house, let some air in. I've been teaching her to read. They're not ones to praise you much, but once old Larry Hackle said to me, "I ain't never heard nobody say nothing agin you or agin your work," which I take as a kind of praise.